pack the bags and head on our way. There ain't a reason for us to stay. We have done everything we can do. Now it's time for me and for you. There is a big world waiting for us. I hope we find what we have lost. Look ahead and don't be afraid. Where there is love, there won't be hate. And where there is rescue, there shines a light. We both can find the way from wrong to right. Into the fire.
Non-stop rock talk with Tyson Bryden. Welcome to Non-Stop Rock Talk. This is your host, Tyson Bryden. Today, I'm very happy to welcome drummer extraordinaire as well as radio celebrity, Troy Patrick Farrell. Troy, how's it going, man?
Well, I don't know about the drummer extraordinaire part. I do okay. And what was the other one? A radio celebrity?
Yeah.
Only in my own mind, man. Only in my own head. But I'm doing good, man. Good to connect with you from Las Vegas here.
Cool. That's awesome. Now, I know somewhere along the line, I seen you play up here in Canada, in Toronto. Possibly it was with John Corabi, or maybe it was Bullet Boys. I can't remember. I mean, I must be getting old because I can't remember every show I've seen now.
Yeah, I think that would be 2010, and that was with Corabi. I'm guessing on the Triple Threat tour. Was there a Faster Pussycat and Tracy Guns there? Yeah,
that was it.
That would have been that tour, yeah.
Wow, that's cool. I mean, you have played with so many artists. There's White Lion, Pretty Boy Floyd, Enuff Z Nuff, Gilby Clarke, John Corabi, and I mean, that's only a few. I mean, kind of give me a rundown. We're going to kind of go back
Sure.
of you moving to LA in 1992 and how it all began from that point on.
After moving out here with the bass player I was with at the time in a band called Brat in Northwest Indiana, Chicago, that's kind of where we were cutting our teeth. Our manager had moved out prior. An old friend from high school was already living in California, and I was just about ready to get out of high school in 91. And, all the forces were pulling us to LA. Gotta go to LA, And I didn't really have a lot going on. And our band, Brat in Chicago, was sort of kind of on its way down as far as, we didn't have consistent members. It just was sort of kind of wearing out its welcome. I think we took it as far as we could. And so the bass player and I said, dude, let's pack up our cars and take out our gear and let's go to California. We had a place for us to stay waiting for us. And I already had some friends. But, the reasons that I moved out there for, as far as having a band all set up, like those never really happened. And, all those things. Yeah, dude, I got a band for you. They're looking for a drummer. They got label interest, major label interest, huge management. They love your stuff. That I never even met those people. You know what I mean? So, and that's kind of a typical LA story. You come out there for a reason, and then you get out there and the reason is already gone. And you go, okay, well, I got to make a new reason to stay here. And, so I was just trying to find my way in and around LA and jamming with some guys, but ultimately ended up playing with a guy named Todd Howarth from Fraley's Comet. Yep. He was the blonde dude with the with Steinberger's guitar.
I just he was the one Todd on the show about a month ago. So
yeah, I say Todd's the one that always sang the good songs in the band.
I agree.
But after playing with him and kind of getting my start auditioning for him, and he going, yeah, man, I love your pocket, and I love your style, what you can contribute to a song. Let's play together. We played together for a few years in a couple different bands called Hardware, and then at one point it was called Wet Camp for whatever reason, but. We did some recordings, and I love the experience playing with Todd. And plus, I got to see some pretty cool Cheap Trick shows because of his affiliation with Cheap Trick. But that's kind of where it started. That was my first, hey, I've seen this guy on MTV. Now I'm in his house rehearsing. Yeah. So that was pretty cool, and I learned quite a bit in those days, absolutely, from him.
Now, was he up in San Diego then, or was he down in LA?
Yeah, he was San Diego at that point, so he was doing rehearsals up in LA, and then once everything got sorted out, we drive down to San Diego and rehearse, but we did a lot of gigs up in LA, so he spent a lot of time between the two cities, which is only a few hours apart, depending on what day of the week you travel.
Yeah. I mean, his story, the whole Fraley's Comet thing it's pretty unusual. Like, it's just how he kind of got into Fraley's Comet, and he was like, he wasn't the guy initially, right? Because it was Richie Scarlett, and then he got the gig, and he came in with all these songs, right? Which was, and like you said, maybe the best material that Fraley's Comet ever did. So.
Yeah, I was never, although I saw Kiss plenty of times. I mean, their show is great. When you're a kid and you want to go see the biggest rock band in the world, Kiss is the band you go to see. But unlike a lot of my friends, I was more into Cheap Trick and Aerosmith and Dio and some of the other stuff. Like, it was more about, not to say that these other bands didn't have their own stage shows, but I kind of felt like I got more from Kiss if I saw them live. But these other bands, I feel like I can listen to on cassette or album at the time, and I felt fulfilled. You know what I mean? But I think with Kiss, you got to see them really to fully appreciate the whole thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, with respect to Todd and Fraley's Comet, the songs that he wrote and sang were kind of the ones that I kind of dug the most, So that's just, my personal preference of being a little bit more into the melodic, rock and roll stuff.
Yeah, and I've told him that I kind of like, there was like certain songs that I always kind of gravitated towards that he did, because to me, he was more, I mean, Ace is raw and Ace is Ace, right? And Ace has his style, but Todd to me is more of a crafted type of songwriter,
Sure.
He really, he does a good job on his songs, and like you said, they're always melodic, and it was awesome because in that interview, we went over the first Fraley's Comet album.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize the song Calling to You was another song he had done in a previous band.
Yeah, 707.
Yeah, which was, so I went back and I listened to that, and I was like, okay, I can hear what Ace changed in it, because the chorus is totally different, but it's pretty much the same song, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so that was very cool. So, I mean, before 92, and you said you were living in Chicago, you came from Chicago to LA?
Yeah, I grew up in Northwest Indiana, so we were, just a hop skip from the city and from all the clubs and the music scene in Chicago, and that's where I was born and raised. And so right out of high school, I hopped on the interstate and made my way west.
So you probably didn't even see much of the scene in Chicago, being that you were just out of high school then, did you?
Well, we played a ton of clubs, man. Played Thirsty Whale, Stay Out West. Maybe the Cabaret Metro. I mean, there were so many. A lot of clubs in the suburbs, and so we played them all. We played them all. We played with a lot of the bands that were, kind of up and coming in and around Chicago. We shared some of the same stages with early Disturbed and stuff like that. Before they became the band. But these are all times and sort of passing one another in the same venue before they became what they were. Then you go back and I was like, hey man, I remember seeing those guys, or hey, did we do some festival with them? And they weren't what they are today, So I got to see a lot of those bands, and at the time you didn't know what they were going to be until years later they became big, and you start going back and remembering these guys. A band called Mind Bomb, which used to be called Daisy Chain, that had they put out an album and had some mild success with one of the tunes. But we used to do gigs with them all the time as Daisy Chain, and they were trippy and cool. And then somehow somebody got to them, changed their name, changed their image a little bit, and they got a record deal, but we knew them from back in the day, Life, Sex, and Death, certainly knew those guys and the affiliations, but didn't see them until, of course, they became Life, Sex, and Death, and, had some popularity, So, guys like Alex Kane, had some time with Enuff Z Nuff, in that history. So, it's all kind of incestual, and you sort of see these guys on the way up and on the way down and back on the way up again. So,
well, it's funny you mention that, because one of the previous interviews I just did, we were talking about Sweet FA and how they were from Indiana, right? But their bass player on the second album was a singer and I can't remember the name of the band, was in a singer assigned band from Chicago as well, but I can't remember what the band was now. It kind of eludes me.
Oh, see, I feel like you have to get on the Wikipedia.
Yeah.
And see, my brother, my brother plays bass, and so we always had music and stuff happening in our house, and he was gigging out when he was as a 12-year-old. My mom and dad would have to go with him in order for him to play the bars. So anyway, he actually auditioned, I think, for Sweet FA, and didn't get the gig, because otherwise I'd know the answer of who the bass player was.
Yeah, that's why.
But, I'll look it up while you're, because I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was. He said the band was really good. The guy that I had interviewed, because we kind of got on a conversation about them. I was like, I had no idea. I remember the first bass player, but I didn't recall who the second one was. So,
gotcha. Second bass player.
yeah,
Sweet F.A.
Yeah, and he was like apparently sang in that other Chicago band.
Huh. Yeah, for some reason that doesn't. Maybe it was Mark Matthews.
Yeah, that's it.
Matthews was in a band called Def Con.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And I think they had two like twin Japanese guitar player dudes, because Mark Matthews was the guy that wore the headset, and it always kind of annoyed me.
Yeah,
but he had cool pipes and stuff. And then he was bookended by these two Japanese guitar players that were awesome.
Wow.
And I feel like they're the Guzman brothers, man. You're taking me back to the old Chicago days. Mark Matthews would have been that bass player. I just saw him in an article. Are you wearing a Sleaze Rocks shirt?
Yes, I actually write for Sleaze Rocks as well.
Oh, well, I'm on the Sleaze Rocks website, and that's where I found that info. So there you go.
Cool. Well, that's good. Olivier will be happy. So we just gave Olivier a plug too. So yeah, I don't write as. That's how I got started before I did this, was writing for Sleaze Rocks. And I was like, I was doing interviews with guys and I was writing them out, and I'm like, it's just not the same effect when you're writing out an interview, because you're not getting the, like how someone describes things and whatnot. Written's a lot different, right? So that's kind of, Sleaze Rocks got me started, and I still do the odd thing, but I mean, this keeps me so busy. So now let's talk about your radio show. I was checking that out. You've got some really cool guests on there. How did that all come about?
In Vegas, there was a station called Radio Vegas Rocks, and at the time, they were sort of illegally broadcasting over the FM airwaves, right? He had some sort of thing hooked up in his backyard, and I think it was interfering with some sort of Christian church station or something,
Oh, wow.
And anyway, he had a website and he had an app, and they still exist today. But I'm just no longer over there. But anyway, I was asked to do some interviews out for promotions of a show that we're going to be at this casino called the M in Las Vegas. And he was looking for some local guys that have been in rock and roll bands to come talk about the show, talk about, like Buck Cherry, Alien Ant Farm, a couple other bands were involved. And just talk about, hey, let's talk rock and roll with guys that actually, are doing it. So a friend called me up, said, hey, this guy's looking to interview some guys. You want to come out? So after the interview, the guy's name was Crazy Jay. He's the owner of the station, and he was interviewing me. He said, hey, man, you really have a pretty cool gift of gab, and you've got some great stories. You sound good on the air. Would you like to do a radio show? And so he was trying to find musicians around town that, could spin music. And some guys just spun music and just said, okay, my next song is AC/DC, Back in Black. And that was it. I like to talk a little bit more. So I would do, sort of 50-50. Some guys were spinning in a 3-hour show, 45 to, I don't know, my show might have 10 to 12 songs in it, and I'm interviewing somebody, or, sometimes we do some bits, we talk about news, whatever. So anyway, the last year, coming up on our 1-year anniversary here at dirtyradio.fm on the internet, as well as we have our own app. I'm on one of 2 channels. We've got Dirty Radio and Dirty Radio Classics, and my show is called This, That, and the Other.
Cool.
And we talk about this, that, and the other. I've had guys like David Thibodeau, one of the survivors from Waco, Malcolm Jamal Warner, Theo from The Cosby Show. And, we've had, of course, a lot of rock and rollers, Jeff Pilson, Mike Tramp, Stevie Rochelle from Metal Sludge. He's always getting in trouble, and, we like to talk about that. It's a little bit more about, I kind of call it like, hey, let's peel the onion a little bit. Let's kick the can, Let's kind of talk about some of these things that have come up, and it's not really an ambush type show, but sometimes I feel like things come up, they become a topic. People talk about them, but we never really get to the nuts and bolts of it. So when something comes up, I kind of like to peel the onion. And, sometimes onions make you cry. But that's, I think that's a therapeutic way to deal with things. Like, hey, let's talk about some of these weird things. Like with Malcolm Jamal Warner, when we had him on, I said, hey, so what do you think about all these Cosby accusations? And how do you support that? Or how do you find because obviously Bill Cosby is a mentor and was sort of his TV dad for years, and now he's going through all this stuff. How do you sort of balance that, you know? And so, you know, getting some open and honest, you know, sort of feelings about situations that people find themselves in, whether, you know, on purpose or not, I find that interesting. You know, I think the human element about how people deal with things, you know, getting booted out of a band or leaving a band because of whatever reason, you know, talking about those things and how it affected them, you know. So that's kind of what we do on This, That, and the Other. We, you know, and sometimes we just have a straight up, hey, man, I got an album coming out next week, and we talk about a couple fun stories and you know, we're done. But sometimes we really get to down to the brass tacks of things, you know.
That's cool. I mean, I love to hear that you're actually spinning music as well. Like, so do you actually play music on the show, you said?
Yeah. We play, you know, typically what I do is, you know, I mean, we take requests. I actually have my own radio show phone line. People can text the request.
Yeah.
And, you know, if somebody says, I want to hear, you know, Bon Jovi, Wanted Dead or Alive, I'll try and find some different version of it. Maybe it's a radio acoustic thing that they did, or maybe it was a cool live performance, you know, something like that. I also like to spin new stuff. Something comes out or somebody goes on Saturday Night Live, I can play the new Foo Fighters song from the album, or I can play their performance on one of the radio shows or TV shows, which I find a little bit more interesting, you know. So I just try and find that different version of a track, or maybe somebody, you know, a peer of said band did a cover of it and did a really cool interpretation of it. So, you know, although you're getting that song that you requested, you're getting maybe a different version you never heard before. Plus we spin, you know, new artists. So we had Susie Corey, who's Canadian. We've had her on the show, and, you know, she's taken a turn to do some kind of more country rock stuff. And so we played her song Outlaw. Yeah. And we're always getting submissions for brand new songs from not only new artists, but artists that have maybe left their mainstay and now they've gone solo. And we'll spin that stuff too, you know?
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, and speaking of that, I'm digging a band called The Great Affairs from Nashville. I just got the CD, and that's freaking killer. I don't know if you've heard of them or heard them. I just had Denny Smith on the show about a week and a half ago. Check it out. It's very Cheap Trickish.
Oh, excellent. Right on my alley. So, you know, when I hear these things, or, you know, whenever I'm watching the news or whatever, something piques my interest, I send myself an email with it. So that's what I'll do. So I'll take a look at it.
Yeah, and there's, I mean, the Ghosts of Sunset. They just did an album. It's more or less, it's kind of like a concept thing. And Todd Long, the drummer from, I think the third drummer from the Verve Pipe, is in that project. But it's more or less a journey back into the 80s of going to LA and being that, like, as you know yourself, moving to LA and trying to be in a band or be a band or whatever. So
yeah. Hey, cool. Is being the third drummer in the Verve about the same as being the eighth drummer in Tantric?
I don't. Yeah, exactly.
Well, bring any credibility.
He corrected me because I posted something on Facebook and I said, "Oh, you were in the Verve Pipe." He goes, "Yeah, but it doesn't count because I'm like the third drummer." I was like, "Man, it counts to me." Like,
yeah,
that's cool, right?
Yeah.
So you're the eighth drummer in Tantric?
You know, I didn't count. I haven't counted, but I did play with Tantric for almost a couple years. Did an album called Mercury Retrograde, and then left on my own accord to just, you know, one of those situations where, you know, once you stop being happy and you know, listen, if you're adding wings to your house and you go, okay, well, I'm doing it because we're adding a wing to the house and I'm sending the kids I don't have yet to college. Yeah. Then you make those sacrifices. But when that isn't happening and you're not really happy and you don't really like the guys that you're, you know, surrounded, you know, by within your RV, but you just go, you know what? I'm done. Maybe it's time to think about something else. And that was something I did a couple of years ago in 2018. I just made a decision that, you know, it just wasn't for me anymore. Yeah. I did all I could do with that band. And, you know, you can, you know, lead a horse to water, but sometimes they decide to take Adderall instead. So, you know, that's just what it is.
Now, they were Days of the New, right? That was three guys from Days of the New?
Yeah, so the original band, Days of the New, would have been with Travis on, Travis Meeks on vocals. And then when he fired them, and Jesse Vest from Days of the New was actually on my show a couple months ago. They have a brand new band, awesome band called Blitzkrieg. And it's the same three guys with a new singer. Oh, and it's sort of kind of the same formula for, you know, Tantric. Those Tantric and Days, or I should say Hugo, the singer of Tantric, was in another band, and they were sharing some management or had some common business, people in between them, and they decided to get together and put together Tantric, which, by the way, I think is a fantastic band. I'm a huge fan of Hugo's vocals and lyrics and songwriting and stuff. He just runs a little short of acceptance as a person, and when you're old and stuff like that, like me. You just kind of, you've put some more value in things. I played with a ton of talented guys that were also awesome human beings.
That's right.
And so, as I get a little bit later in my years, I choose to play with those people instead.
Oh, that's cool. And I mean, speaking of, we're going to talk about Enuff Z Nuff and Pretty Boy Floyd, but an intriguing part of your story is the Lost Angels, which was yourself, John Corabi, / a Snake Pit singer Eric Dover, and Silent Rage bassist EJ Kirk.
Yeah.
What happened with that project?
Oh, we're still doing it. So, we started this in 2010. I had played in India with White Lion. We did our last 2 shows in December of 2008 in India. And there was a guy that wanted to, sort of kind of a promoter guy. I don't know that he was doing anything on any big levels, but he did some research on who was in the band, started looking up some stuff, found my email and sent me an email saying, hey, I want to put together, this is now in 2010, I want to put together something for these arenas, these outdoor soccer stadiums, I should say. And I want to get guys like, Gilby Clarke and, whoever. And I saw that you were here with White Lion. I saw that you played with Gilby Clarke. What can you do? So I started to call my friends and finding out what the details were about this. And as we recruited John Corabi, Eric Dover, and at the time it was Muddy Stardust on bass, who has played with LA Guns, but he was also in the Burning Tree with Mark Ford from the Black Crowes before Mark was in Black Crowes. So this is your suspects right here. And we flew out there and we were like, well, we need a name. And so we were going to call ourselves The Angels, but, we're all living in Los Angeles. So it was Los Angels, right? And then Muddy's mom says, well, why don't you guys just call yourself The Lost Angels instead, And so we dubbed it The Lost Angels. We flew out to go do these 2 shows, and that was really going to be all it was going to be, But certainly we enjoyed playing together, and what a catalog to pull from. I mean, outside of just classic rock, but from the Corabi catalog, the Slash catalog, and just generally speaking, we had a great bunch of tunes. It was just like an all-star kind of cover band, And we ended up doing some dates in the Midwest. We played the Milwaukee Summerfest, which is huge. And we've gone on to play, we've been down to Mexico. We've been down to Australia. We've been to the UK. We were just there 2019. We were just in the UK and other territories up there. And right now we have dates booked in August in the UK to return. Wow. Obviously, with everything kind of on the open, are we opening? Are we not opening? What happens from people that don't live here? Can they travel here? Vaccines, what are going to be the requirements? So right now, these dates that we have in August of this year, 2021, we're sort of kind of keeping an eye on those. But it is still very active. And in fact, I'd like to break some news here on your show is that we are going to begin tracking this month of some drums of a couple of demos. And there'll be some Lost Angels solo material. So it'll have Eric Dover singing some stuff, and John Corabi singing some stuff. Ryan Roxy's involved from the Alice Cooper camp. Eric Brittingham from Cinderella's also involved. So it really is a cool group of guys, and we're all going to be a part of it in some way, shape, or form. So looking forward to doing those recordings.
Well, please don't tell Eric I said his last name wrong.
Eric Brittingham?
No, Dover. Dover. Yeah, I said it. Dover. Oh, yeah. Dover.
Eric Dover. Oh, well, see, now that's what I'm going to call him, Dover. Hello, Dover. But he's good, man. He's his mind is off on in other planetary realms. He doesn't worry about he doesn't sweat the small stuff.
I mean, I got to see him with Snake Pit back in the 90s. They came up here to Toronto, and he was awesome.
Yeah.
And I saw him with Alice, too.
He is, man, I got to tell you, he's a secret weapon. He's an easy guy to tour with. He's a great guy to tour with. He's out there. He's a very different guy. And, drummers are kind of meat and potatoes and kind of simple, right? For the most part, although there are the stories of the crazy, outrageous drummers. But it's either some wacko dude or just, they're kind of the sort of the glue, right?
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to certain things. And sometimes we can't understand when somebody's weird. We get freaked out by it. Like, why is this guy so weird and trippy? Dover's a great, trippy, weird, talented guy because he is real. And he will give it to you straight, but he is so out there when it comes to ideas. You go, yes, whatever you're thinking right now, let's do it, because it's going to be something different and something creative. And I mean, playing with him, not only can the guy sing and play anything, he looks cool, and it's somebody I've known for over a decade now, and it is awesome when you're playing behind him and you're hearing him sing Cinderella in the key that the song was written in, and you're just going, oh my God, this guy's a freak, man. But it's awesome. I love playing with Eric, and obviously Corabi. I mean, two guys having bookend vocals of those capabilities. I mean, it really is an awesome band. It's a privilege that I was able to call these guys, and they answered the phone and said, "Yeah, we'll do this." And for the most part, we've had some good times doing it for sure.
That's cool. I mean, I look forward to hearing material that, like you mentioned, that's very cool. So
yeah, we started talking about doing some stuff, and the guy sent me some demos, and I'm now they've been kind of sitting around for some months, for a better part of the kind of last year. Last year was such a trippy year, but sometimes things just find their way to have the proper timing, and right now I think is the time to do this. Things are starting to kind of open up. People are going to start to get busy and kind of get into that zone, and knowing that we can record something to where it'll have a home somewhere, hopefully in somebody's, CD player or MP3 player, and and we're able to distribute it, and we're gonna have some shows now that we can support it with,
Yeah. Now, is Cheap Thrill? That's another project you were involved in with Devil City Angels singer Brandon Gibbs. I love Brandon.
Brandon's awesome.
Yeah. Collective Soul guitarist Josh. How do you pronounce that? I better say that right.
Joel Kosha, who was in Collective Soul for a long time, and he also would be sort of the most recent Devil City Angels guitar player. I mean, obviously, it's hard to say. With some of these projects, it's hard to say what the status is of them, because everybody's status is, well, we're not really doing anything. But Joel would be the guy if they end up putting that back together.
Yeah, that's cool. And so that's kind of on hiatus right now, is it, or?
Yeah, we did some dates, funny story, it's funny now looking back at it, but, late in 2019, we had booked some shows for spring of 2020. Well, spring of 2020 is when everything started shutting down. Yeah. And so, people didn't know really what to do then in, March and April of 2020. So, of course, we postponed them,
Yeah.
And then we postponed them again, and then we postponed them again, and then we had to change the venues because this county was doing one thing and the other county wasn't doing the same thing, and then we had to replace one show because the guy, his venue was on the wrong side of the freeway. If he was on this side, he would have been able to do the show, but he was 200 feet the wrong way and their county wasn't allowed, so we battled with just doing these 3 or 4 shows for a better part of 2020. We did end up getting them done. Some great people that we know in Green Bay helped us get those shows, and some friends that I have in St. Louis put it together, and we ended up doing 4 shows. We did a stripped-down acoustic version of just Brandon, Joel, and I, kind of a little bit more of a storyteller's thing, and it ended up being great. It was great that we only had maybe 50 to 75 people there because that's all that was allowed, and it was a nice kind of cool, intimate vibe, and a lot of those people knew each other, so it just kind of felt like a campfire gig. And we were all going through this weirdness of coronavirus together, playing live music, and it was really a great feeling to finally get it done. But we will be doing some more stuff this year. That's such an easy gig. Again, it's got sort of the same formula as any kind of cover band with guys that you might know from other bands. But, with Brandon writing so many original songs, not only as Devil City Angels, but Brandon Gibbs, we get to tap into his stuff. And Joel writes his own original material. So we get to do that. Plus we do Collective Soul. We do some Poison. We do some, Molly. We do, sort of the usual suspects. But where Lost Angels is a little bit more of a classic rock, we're doing more of the 70s kind of stuff.
Yeah.
When we do cover tunes. The Cheap Thrill would be a little bit more of a 80s, 90s, 2000s, So it is a different band, and it is a different vibe. And, it's something else I really enjoy doing it because of the people I'm doing it with. And that, later in my years, that's so much more important to me, is enjoying who you're doing it with than, going, man, I dig the music. I love playing these songs, but I hate the people I'm doing it with. And that is a terrible thing to do. So kids, if you're out there and if you're in a band with somebody and you can't figure it out, if you just simply can't figure it out because you're not going to change, they're not going to change, maybe you got to get a change of scenery. So, that's just something I've learned as I got older,
It's like having a bad girlfriend too.
Yeah, man, it is. Or a bad STD, it just doesn't go away. You got to deal with it. So, deal with your lead singer like an STD because he will not go away.
That's good. Now let's talk about touring with Enuff Z Nuff.
Yeah.
At that time, it was yourself, Johnny Monaco, and Chip Z Nuff, I believe.
Yeah. As a three-piece. So Monaco and Chip and their drummer, and I'll remember his name in a second, Eric, they opened up for White Lion on a tour that we did in 2005. We did 5 weeks of dates together. And then, I grew up loving Enuff Z Nuff. I played on Donnie V's solo album, Just Enough, on a few tracks. And, got him out of his bedroom closet to come do some shows in the late 90s, in the Midwest. And I've always just been a big supporter of those guys. I love those guys together. They're sort of my generation's Cheap Trick to me. Enuff Z Nuff was the band that was just about to break and broke as I was cutting my teeth in that Chicago market. So to be able to play with Chip and Donnie over separate times has been awesome, And I love those tunes. Huge fan of Vic Fox. You can't go wrong.
Yeah, and ironically enough, he's playing in Pretty Boy Floyd now.
Yeah, which is a band that I was in, and he sort of took my spot in that. But I love Vic. He's a guy that I'll get on the show at some point because there's certainly some weird stories about Vic and being in the Vince Neil band and about stealing gear and stuff like that. But so that's like something I want to get into. Like, hey, how did this story come about? About this missing gear and what's the lowdown on it? So those are things I like to talk about. In addition to he's playing in a band called the Veronicas, and of course, obviously, Enuff Z Nuff. Just talking about all those different experiences. I think Vic is one of the greatest drummers out there. Certainly one of my top 3 influences for sure.
I seen him with the Vince Neil band, Canada Day, with Van Halen.
Oh wow!
And he was just a ball of energy, man. There's people throwing bottles, and he was playing, and he didn't miss a beat, and he was hitting them with his sticks as they were coming at him. He was. I was like, man, this guy is so good. That band was killer too. It was just awesome. I will admit, Vince Neil was that might be the best I've ever seen him.
Yeah, wow. I think when he put out that solo album, that first one. And was starting to do, coming out as Vince Neil on his own with, Steve Stevens and this killer looking band. It really was like, whoa. Everybody stopped what they were doing to see what he was doing. It's a shame that he doesn't play any of those songs when he does solo stuff. And it's so, for example, if I had him on this thing, I'd be like, dude, how do you neglect those 2 albums? There's some great tunes there. How do you not do, you're invited, but your friends can't, come and so
pain and look in your eyes. I agree with you, man. And The Crawl off the second album was a killer song. I really dug that song.
I don't know how he just ignores that entire, because I really think, professionally, and I think, I don't know if spiritually is the right word, but to see what really, people were going, what is going on here? Vince out of Motley Crue, and then to put together this great band with a great collection of tunes. I think he did it the right way. And it's interesting that it's sort of just kind of left there on the side, and it's not really to be talking about again,
Yeah, it's very funny because, Tommy Shaw and Jack Blades were involved in some songwriting. They wrote You're Invited But Your Friend Can't Come, and then you got Steve Stevens, and he's involved, and, the songs were killer. The album looked great. It was just, I was excited when it came out because I love the Motley Crue 94 album. Exposed came out before that, but Exposed sounded more like Crue than Crue did now, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So, those, I'm the same as you, though. That would be a question I would ask, too, because I would like to know, why the heck do you go out doing solo and you don't do any of your solo material? You just play the same Motley Crue songs.
Yeah. It is weird. It is weird to me, and then you mentioned, Motley Crue not sounding like Motley Crue. I kind of feel like, there's a lot of debate. That album seems to be the most debated among, where it's the best album that Motley Crue ever did, but it's not Motley Crue, and I'm like, well, I get what you're saying. I get the sentiment because, you feel that Motley Crue are these four guys, which, that's a good argument. However, with that being said, I don't think they could have done that album with Vince Neil,
No. It wouldn't have sounded like that.
And it wouldn't have been a Motley Crue album, even if it was the four guys, if that was the album that they did. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. Everything works out for a reason. It seems like everybody's cool. And, with the exception of this virus thing, they would have been out on a huge tour by now, getting into second or third legs by now, But as far as, how the history books go, yeah, they got that one little asterisk there. But it's also, it produced great solo albums by Vince Neil and produced a great Motley Crue album with John Corabi on vocals, Yeah,
and I mean, I would love to hear the other album that became Generation Swine, because apparently John Corabi has it, right?
Yeah, I'm sure there's some demos somewhere on YouTube that you can find him singing some of those. I'm almost certain.
I think I've heard one, maybe one or two, and they're cool. It was a weird album, anyways. Generation Swine was a very strange album. So
yeah, I agree.
Like
that almost didn't feel like a Motley Crue album. It felt like they were still trying to wash off some of the Motley Crue album, the '94 album a little bit. They were still trying to figure out where, how to recoup what had happened, So who's to say, man? Art is an interesting thing. It's up to interpretation, and listen, I get that your bands have their formulas, but that's what you're feeling and that's what you're doing. I say you do it, and hope that somebody buys it. If they don't, they don't. Then you go back to Girls.
Exactly. Well, I think Afraid kind of helped the album because it was different because of that intro bass line, but it still had that Motley Crue formula. I think it was probably the best thing that they could put out to appease the fan base. Okay, this still sounds like Motley Crue. It's a little bit different, but it's not too different. But then when you put on the whole album, you're like, wow, this is really different.
Yeah, for sure.
So now Pretty Boy Floyd, I have to say this, they're possibly, and a lot of people say it's the most over-the-top glam band of the era. Some may say Poison, but I think Pretty Boy Floyd's first album, Leather Boys with Electric Toys, is that cover just says it all, right? It's kind of, looks huge. It's kind of like Kiss meets Motley Crue type of thing. How did you initially hook up with them?
I through sort of handling the business for bands like my Tramp, White Lion, our agency, Artists Worldwide. In fact, Christy Majors has a partnership in that agency, and still does, as far as I know, to this day. They've been in business for 25 years. Give or take, right? So just doing a lot of back and forth with their lead agent there, because I was the go-to guy for the band, and Chuck would be my go-to guy for the agency, but I knew that there was somebody else in another office there, sort of a little bit more behind the scenes, and that was Christy Majors. So it was through that relationship that not only did I start booking bands there as an agent, is when Chris was like, hey man, I want to go out and do some Pretty Boy Floyd dates. Are you down? Do you want to do it? And it was with that sort of relationship working at the booking agency is how I got into that band.
Wow. Was that a fun gig?
Yeah, it had its highs and lows. It was one of those things where we played to some tracks, and so I was tethered to some tracks at times, which isn't really fun. But
is that like for vocals?
Yeah, not for lead vocals or anything. Just some of the backing vocals and maybe some extra guitar parts. But the band's a live band. We were full on playing live. But we had some enhancements. But certainly nobody was singing to any ghost tracks or any fake guitar solos or anything. If there was some keyboards to be had, those might be on there, but nothing from the mainstay of the four guys up on stage. We were all very much playing. But it was a cool band. We did some great gigs overseas. It's one of those bands that just does really good overseas. You go to Sweden, the UK, South America. The band just does great over there. People are still kind of think that Pretty Boy Floyd is the OG glam rock band. Even though Poison came out, there's something, Pretty Boy Floyd just really is kind of in their own category for what they did on that album. And the songs were fun to play, straight up, right in my wheelhouse. So I thoroughly enjoyed playing with those guys, for sure.
So now you worked with Jani Lane, I understand.
Did, yeah. 2006, I played in the Jani Lane band.
I mean, his name comes up a lot on my show because, I mean, it's the respect for his talent. I think unless you truly worked with the man, you don't even know the half of it because you got to play with him. But what was it like playing with Jani?
Well, we had a handful of shows. I played with him in the year 2006, and unfortunately, he was really battling a lot of demons when I was with him, and so there were three ways it could go. A, we would go do the shows and they would be great and everything would be awesome. B, we would go do the shows, he wouldn't be great and everything wasn't totally awesome. Or C, he simply just wouldn't show up at all. The three of us would fly somewhere, we'd be at the airport and the little turnstile thing's going and there'd be just a bag of luggage sitting on there and it was his. And he would go to the airport to check in, he would check his bag and then leave and not get on the plane. So the three band guys would be out there waiting for him, and the only thing that we had evidence of, of anything was his luggage, And then we, of course, call management and say, hey, so we've got Janie's bag, but we don't have Jani. He's like, yeah, he didn't make the flight. I was waiting for you guys to land to tell you. We're going to put you up at so-and-so hotel, and we're going to fly you back tomorrow. So, we had those that happened, those where he just simply didn't make it. And then we had some shows that were awesome, where he was in such a great space.
Right.
Where he was on 10, and it was awesome. It was magical. Unfortunately, there were fewer of those than any of B and C. B would have been, well, he's there, but he's not in a great spot, and it was tough getting through some shows, and it was tough seeing them that way because, nobody wants to be up there and, for lack of a better term, sucking, right? Yeah. That's tough to do, or if one guy's just not there, but you also care about him as a person, and you don't want to see your guy up there not happening, Yeah. And so that was really the more of the difficult feeling about it was, well, we're sucking and we're looking terrible in front of these people. Like, no, this guy I admire up there that's super talented is having a really rough time and he just can't shake it. You don't want to see people like that. So it was a really bittersweet thing. I mean, the few great shows we had are awesome and I'll always remember them. And then there was some, later in life, some of the nonsense that went on. You can laugh about him now, like he and his manager choking each other, walking out of a hotel, fighting over who knows what, or the time that thousands of little flyers fell out of the van because the van door came open as you're on the freeway and the wind circulated them all out, going all over the highway. You laugh about some of these now, but we miss the guy. I mean, he was super talented. And, he should still be here, really. He really should still be here. And it's a shame that whoever that one person could have got to him and did something to trigger, surviving in his mind. It's a shame that never happened, if it was to happen at all,
Yeah, I mean, I saw the reunion, 2008.
Okay, yeah.
They came up to Toronto. So it was funny because the band walked out the back door and he walked out the front door. And it was like, and then at the end of the show, we saw them and they went back to wherever they were going, the hotel, I would assume, on their own. And then he was gone, like he was wherever, yeah. Right? Which I thought was very odd, but the show was very odd too, because we were right in the front and, you could tell he was trying to stay sober, but he was having a hard time with it because, no word of a lie, I was in the front and he was right in front of me and he reached down into my beer and splashed it on his face. And
wow.
And it was like, oh man. It's like, then I felt bad afterwards because I'm thinking, this guy's trying to stay sober and here I am, I'm in the front row and I'm drinking a beer and this is, you can't help that because, you're at a venue and,
yeah.
Right. But I felt bad afterwards because I'm like, it was only shortly after that he left the band again.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a tough thing. It's, the thing is, he has to take responsibility for, his downfall. However, obviously he had an illness, I mean, that's an illness too. So, it's a tricky thing, I'm sure that Jani would say, and maybe he has stated at some point that, this is my issue, and I need to take care of my issue, because then ultimately, if he doesn't take care of it, it becomes everybody's issue. Everybody on stage, the people witnessing, one thing that I was really encouraged by was when he started playing with Great White. I thought, man, because how many singers, they've had a couple singers, and I thought really I was rooting for him because he's up there. Like, I really felt like he tried to pay great respect to
those songs,
Jack Russell, and those songs and those vocal melodies, and to learn the lyrics and to go up there sort of as a broken guy going, hey, I still got this, and I want to be here. And I was like rooting for him when he started playing some shows with them to fill in some shows. I was like, man, this is awesome, and I was hoping that, that would have turned into something positive in some way, shape, or form. I mean, it's a shame.
Yeah, that was amazing. And you mentioned that, like, he's kind of broken. Jack Russell's not there because he's broken, so he's filling in for, it was kind of it was like you were rooting for him and he did a great job. I will say that.
I thought so. Yeah, I thought so.
I thought he did a really good job. Now, of course, we mentioned Mike Tramp and White Lion.
Yeah.
Mike's such a hardworking guy. He seems very professional. I had him on the show last year. He was awesome. And he takes it very seriously. How long did you play with White Lion for?
So we did White Lion that started the beginning of 2005 until the very end of 2008. And I played on any of those albums. Yeah, that one, Return of the Pride. We did a couple live albums. One came out on I want to say Atlantic or Sony. There was extended versions. There was the Rockin' in the USA. And then, of course, we put out the DVD from Bang Your Head. And, that was from our 2005 performance, but I think it came out maybe in 2007. There's also some bootleg stuff and some weird stuff out there, but those would be all the kind of official ones. But, no, I mean, that was really, Mike, in 2001 is when I got into his solo band. He was coming off the Capricorn album, was finally making his way to the States because he would go to different territories around the world, play with whoever was there that he knew. Yeah. Because otherwise you're shipping your band everywhere. And as he's kind of grassroots and building his solo career after the Freak of Nature days, which was post White Lion, he came to a couple of the Freak of Nature's guys. Is it Freaks of Nature? Anyway,
Freak of Nature.
Yeah, but I mean, would it be Freaks of Nature if it's two guys in the band? But anyway,
that's right.
So it would be Kenny Corabi and Jerry Best, who had a band going on, and of course Mike calls them saying, "Hey, I'm coming to do some solo shows. I want you guys to be my backing band. Do you have a drummer?" Well, they had a drummer, but the drummer wasn't able to leave for the tour. So that said drummer called a mutual friend of mine saying, "Hey, man, there's this Mike Tramp guy coming from White Lion. I can't do the tour. I need to fill in. Do you know somebody that would be a good guy? I want to, I sort of feel bad that I can't be there." And this buddy called me up, this guy named John Stack from a great band called Choking Ghost in L.A., who's no longer, the band's no longer with us, John is. And he says, "Hey, man, you know the Mike Tramp, the White Lion dude? Well, he's playing with two guys. He can't do the tour. I think you'd be the great guy for it." So I got in touch with Jerry, came and auditioned with them. Jerry put his stamp of approval on it, and then met Mike in 2001 for a tour. And that was sort of my big first, tour, some of it was like, "Oh my God, awesome." And some of it was like, "Well, this isn't so awesome. What is this?" But I learned a ton on that tour. I learned everything about tour managing and advancing shows because nobody was doing it. And, this is thinking 2001, 20 years ago, that, we didn't have the iPhones and the everything that you needed. You could find anybody anywhere. It was very antiquated, looking up a club to get their number or to, whatever. So I really cut my teeth learning the business end of things. Mike at some point ended up having me settle the shows. I was collecting the money at the end of the night or before we went on and, making sure we had meals. And hey, we're coming in early. Can you check in the hotels for us? Like stuff like that that wasn't being done,
Wow.
So I really learned a lot of that stuff and added sort of a new talent and a new tool to my repertoire as a drummer.
Yeah.
Hey, I can also do these things too, So I learned tons about the business on that tour. So fast forward to 2005, Mike wants to put together a White Lion, and he kind of picked and chose his guys. And I was listed as a drummer, and they had an Australian guitar player, Klaus, our bass player from Denmark, and then we picked up a keyboard player from Germany to help on those keyboard songs and the vocals, and that would be the White Lion Mach 2, I guess.
Yeah. Did he have a hard time finding a Vito Bratta type of guy?
Well, short answer is, yes and no. Obviously, you can't just throw any guitar player in there.
That's right.
But with that being said, I think, here's the thing about, if you notice that Mike does these songs in a very different way these days, right? Yeah. He does them a little bit more singer-songwriter, a little bit more Bruce Springsteen, kind of Thin Lizzy, Bryan Adams,
Yeah.
And so while if you're going to book the band as White Lion, it's got to sound like White Lion, but I think he had to know that, there are those guys that would be Vito clones, but they didn't look cool, or they couldn't sing, or they were just weird. You know what I mean? And when you're going out in a bus or whatever, you got to sort of round it off to get the best of all the worlds, So it can't be, well, he could play the Vito parts, but he looks like a freak up there, or he's an obnoxious, So you had to try and find the right guy. So Jamie from Australia sang great, looked great, and could play that stuff almost on a Les Paul, but those songs weren't written on a Les Paul, So ultimately, Jamie switched to like a Charvel Jackson guitar, lighter, could come up a little bit, and the angle of everything was much more, lending to the style of Vito Bratta. But at the end of the day, only Vito Bratta can play Vito Bratta, and the guy that's not Vito Bratta can only try his hardest to pay his respects to the songs. We sort of took some liberties with those songs. We changed some things. I certainly didn't play all the Greg D'Angelo parts. I sort of kind of played what I felt would be there if it was, if I was the guy that was there, and that was the guy that was there at the time. So, and no disrespect to Greg, but he's got a different style than I did, so I can either suck trying to play somebody else's style or nail it doing my style, while not trampling on the essence of the song, So, everybody sort of made these songs their own, At the end of the day, those big choruses and having the vocals up there really helped. But, listen, you can ask 10 people and 5 might say, hey, that was a good White Lion show. And the other 5 would go, that wasn't White Lion. If you ask Mike Tramp's answer is that wasn't White Lion. And by all accounts, he sort of kind of regrets doing it, which I think takes a little bit away from me and the other guys that were doing everything they could to support what we were calling White Lion, And I never go back and go, well, I regret that. I don't regret that. I don't regret my time there. And I'm sad to hear if he does. I hope he doesn't, because we had some great times together. We made some great music together. And some people that never got to see the band and those songs got to. And, a couple of those places were places like Indonesia. Yeah. And we went to India. And we played in front of... collectively between the both shows, almost 75,000 people, in soccer stadiums. And those people don't get music. Yeah. And so we brought them something that they still remember to this day, And so I think it's a little unfair to say, well, I probably shouldn't have done this, It's a shame the way things went down, when we were going to be on the Poison Rat tour and Vito sued everybody to get us off that tour, It was a shame all that stuff happened, and it's a shame that Vito couldn't have been a part of it, or could have said, hey, I can't be a part of it, but I know that you're going to do the right thing with it, But I think now they're on better. Listen, people grow up and they go, yeah, I probably shouldn't have handled it that way. It is what it is.
Well, it's very unfortunate because the chances were he wasn't going to be in the band. He didn't want to do it, and Mike's trying to keep that legacy of that band name going, and people wanted to see it,
White Lion from 91, after the 91, 92, once they finished the main attraction tour, that was it, And you either got to see Mike Tramp doing different versions of a couple White Lion tuned in his solo band, or you didn't get to see anything at all, So I think there was a demand there, a little bit. I mean, we certainly we did it for a lot of years, and in 2006, 7, and 8, we played a shit ton of shows. And, so somebody was interested in having us there, and I feel like it was represented the right way, it's a shame if he doesn't feel that, if he feels it was a bad thing to do, And I listen, I read the interviews, and Mike and I are still friendly today. I just had him on my show. We were talking about Eddie Van Halen when Eddie Van Halen passed away, so a couple months now. We still talk, and, we Merry Christmas and Happy Birthday and stuff like that. I mean, I love my Tramp, and we're still, even to this day, always talking about putting together a live band for the States, because the last couple times he's been here, it's been acoustic, and I think people want to see him do a live show.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. I mean, I saw White Lion, the original band, on the big game tour. Yeah, so I mean, I got to see them open up for Cinderella.
Yeah.
In '89, I think it was. They were great. I talked to Mike about it, and he actually remembered the show, which was crazy. He goes, "Oh, I remember that show." I was like, "Really?" After playing that many that long ago and playing that many shows, he still remembered it. It was pretty cool. So great,
excellent,
great band though. Yeah. They were good.
Yeah, I mean, really the experience and just all that I learned from my Tramp, even back to the solo band days in '01 to then being in that band. I mean, it really elevated my profile enough that I could talk to these other bands and play with them and go, hey, I did a stint with my Tramp, White Lion. They know his character, they know his standards, and they go, oh, well, if he can play with some of these people, then he must be worth having coming down to at least see if we can do our stuff, And I've been fortunate to play with a lot of great cats, even the bad experiences, you get something good out of if you're smart.
Yeah, and you just learn or whatever. I mean, I think I seem to remember Todd Howarth, when I had him on the show, mentioning that they had toured with White Lion. And he said that Mike was, even at that time, was very focused and didn't drink. Just, like he wouldn't go out with them. He kind of stayed in the hotel. He'd always stay back. He'd get up early in the morning. He was, he was very... The music was it, right? And he wanted White Lion to be successful.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Mike will have a good time and sit down and have a beer with the guys, but he is all about, he's singing 4 nights a week. If you're doing some U.S. tour, playing, wherever you can play, you got to rest the pipes, and, socializing and drinking are really worse than singing for 90 minutes straight. Those are the worst things a singer can do, is to talk to people. Yeah. And so he was, very, very cool. But, he's, just seeing him humbled and seeing him on stage enjoying his craft, which I didn't really see a lot of that in White Lion. I didn't see him really enjoying himself. And maybe this goes back to him sort of feeling like, well, I shouldn't be doing this, or my guy Vito should be up here with me, whatever it was, whatever angst he had about it. Or maybe reading the criticisms about doing, well, that's not White Lion, I see him up on stage really enjoying himself and telling those stories and reliving those moments, that stand out to him. It really is the first time since I had played with him that I see him enjoying himself. And I love that. I think, people that, bring so much to others should give a little bit back to themselves too,
Oh, that's cool. For him, maybe it felt like, like if you're cheating on your girlfriend or your wife, maybe that's how it felt to him. Who knows, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to get into the heads of those guys and what, their relationship feels like, when, the one guy says, well, I don't want to do it, but I don't want you to do it either. You're going to ruin it, or it's going to, dilute it, whatever the conversations they had, I mean, it sucks, but, maybe one day Vito will go, you know what, I probably shouldn't have been so hard on you and just let you go and do it. Or maybe he won't ever say that. Who knows? I don't think anything will ever change. But those guys do get along now, and they talk, and
which is good.
I don't really foresee them ever getting back together as White Lion. But hey, if they did, I'll be there to set up the drums.
Yeah, he's almost like Vinnie Vincent. Almost like Vito Bratta's almost like Vinnie Vincent, like gone off the face of the earth, more or less. You don't see a whole lot. You know what I mean? And
you left the door open for me to say something, but I'm not going to say anything inappropriate about Vinnie Vincent.
I wasn't leaving.
Like, man, should I say it? Should I not say it? But I was going to say, but he doesn't wear the same size dress. Hey, that's it. That's all I got.
I didn't even think of that. That was good.
Sorry. This is kind of what we do on my dumb radio show. We sort of poke at some of the obvious stuff. Vinnie Vincent, I mean, I was a fan of that first album, just going, what the heck is this? That ended up becoming, those guys in Slaughter. But, Boys Are Gonna Rock. And then hearing about the weirdness of him putting on these events and selling box sets and demo tapes and then not delivering them and canceling things and guitar, stuff. I can't support that. Whether he now the question is with him is if I had him on, I'd be like, or there's obviously some some transitioning going on there somewhere, even a hint of it. I go, hey, so what's your status? I mean, what people are kind of curious, and how do we address you? We want to address you the right way, So I would ask that question where I kind of feel like, I don't know, man, it's kind of weird. It's the elephant in the room. I don't want to ask if he's a she or she's a he, That was. I might just kind of figure out like, hey, where's your head at, so I can just properly address you and see where your mind is. But so Vito, has been reclusive, definitely like Vinnie Vincent. I'm probably going to, get some flack for saying whatever I said about Vinnie. Vinnie, I apologize. I'm just curious as to what's going on there.
Well, I mean, I just had Bobby Rock on the show a couple of weeks ago talking about All Systems Go. We went through the whole album, and I asked him straight out about Vinnie. I said, what was it like to work with him?
Yeah.
And he said he never yelled and screamed. And he was cool. He's just, I guess, kind of elusive. And it's very weird.
And maybe eccentric too, which can, when you're kind of eccentric and kind of, listen, David Bowie kind of being, androgynous. Yeah. I mean, that was people like, what's up, that was weird. That was weird and intriguing at the same time to see. It's sort of the same thing, going, hey, what's going on here? So it's really more out of that. Like, hey, is this, are you, doing some trippy art stuff, or are you just, listen, to each their own. You do whatever you want. You want to do, have at it. Be happy and be who you are.
That's true.
I just don't know who you are, and I'm curious.
I think a lot of people were curious after that convention, right? When he showed up at the convention, and you're like, okay, you're kind of like, what's he wearing? Like, is he? It was kind of confusing. It's like, okay, is he kind of going back to his glam roots from the first Vinnie Vincent album, or is he? And I'm not going to say it out loud. I mean, people can make their own judgment on that, but
sure.
It was strange.
Yeah. And considering that, Vinnie has been so, just, gone for so long, musically and in the public and stuff like that, had some weird stuff with dogs or something. So there's weird, and unfortunately, it's the car crash on the other side of the freeway. We all turn our necks to see it. It's our nature, for better or for worse. I don't judge whether that's the right thing or the wrong thing, but people are curious about stuff that is different. It's just the way it is. Yeah. And that's why maybe some of those bands, let's go back to that first Pretty Boy Floyd album. You see this thing, you're buying the album just for the artwork. Yeah. You don't know what's in it. You never heard of these guys, but you want to know. Yeah.
The first Poison album, same thing. The first look what the cat dragged in.
Exactly. So, a lot of these things are done intentionally, to sort of get some curiosity, because people, the human nature is to be curious about things that are different.
Yeah. I agree.
It's the human way, Now, whether you judge somebody about it or ridicule them for that, that's where, maybe that's not the right thing to do. But to be curious about it, want to ask questions is, that's the human nature.
I mean, for me as a music fan back then, I was just a kid, right? So 10, 11 years old when those albums came out. And, there would be people that thought it was cool. They'd be like, oh, that looks cool. But then there was a lot of ridicule, because then people thought, they're like, why are you listening to that? It's like, have you listened to it? You're just making the judgment on the cover. You're not making the judgment on the music.
Exactly.
Right. So it was kind of I think it made you have thick skin, that's for sure, to what you were listening to.
For sure, you had to defend it, down to the knuckles. You had to defend your rock and roll.
Yeah.
Stand up for rock and roll and fight for your right to party and all that stuff, right?
Exactly. So we talked about Cheap Thrill, Los Angeles. Do you have any end of the show? Is there anything else on the forefront for this year musically, or is that keeping you pretty busy?
Yeah, well, hopefully it's going to start keeping me and my fellow comrades busy doing music. Coming up in the third week of this month, March here, I'll be back with Gilby Clarke. EJ Curse, who's been playing with Gilby for longer than I have, actually, will be on bass, and Teddy Zigzag. We're doing a live stream. Now, I don't have the details on it, but we're doing a live stream. I don't know if it's going to be live for broadcast or taped for broadcast, but I'm looking forward to some Gilby Clarke stuff, keeping us busy as well. I tracked a couple songs on his new album, The Gospel Truth, and he's been trickling out singles sort of while we're waiting for, things to open up. And I think that we'll be doing some live shows in support of the album, somewhere. So I anticipate that being a part of this year's equation, as well as Cheap Thrill and Lost Angels and This, That, and the Other radio show at dirtyradio.fm.
Cool. Right on. That's awesome. I'm looking forward to that Gilby, actually. That Gilby album, actually. That's on Golden Robot Records, I believe.
Yeah. He's put out 3 singles, and they're cool. They're all very cool. So I think he did a good job on the album. He's got Nikki Sixx involved on a track, and Stephen Perkins played drums, and but he's got sort of a bunch of guys that he's played with, and then special guests. I'm sure maybe there's a Steve Stevens appearance there somewhere, but he's got all his buddies playing on it, and it's an honor to be on a couple of the tracks. I probably demoed about 4 or 5 songs, just going in there, just giving him drum beats so he can craft his song around it. And then I ended up tracking 2 of them that stayed on the album. And then, he wanted to include other people, so he got other people to track. So there's, a handful of drummers, handful of bass players, and some different guitar players and stuff. So
that's cool. I mean, I'm a fan. I'm going back to, I was pumped last year because I got Pawn Shop Guitars on the reissue on vinyl, which sounds great.
Yeah.
And then I found the Kill for Thrills album on vinyl as well. Right. So I was pretty pumped about that. So I'm a fan. Yeah. I mean, I have a few of the stuff after, but I haven't actually heard those songs yet. And I'm going to have to check them out.
Yeah, definitely check them out, because I feel that the time from the last album to this album, he really has. I mean, it's a rockin' album. Cool. I mean, if you're looking to hear some gritty guitar, and some rockin' stuff, this album has it. I was really impressed with him, because I would keep going back there, and he'd be playing me something new, and I'd be like, "Oh, this is what you've been doing this album," because we tracked the stuff so long ago. Yeah. And, you think, maybe 6-8 months, but some time had passed, and then I heard it. I go, wow, you really have been working on this. I could really tell they put a lot of effort into the songs. And then when, coronavirus came, the, sort of delay and, well, what do we do with it? He kept recording, so he ended up with some more tracks, and, so he really has been working hard on it, and I look forward to when he can put it out there, and we can do some shows and include a couple of those songs on there. So,
well, that's what I'm going to go do when we get off of here. I'm going to go check those.
Yeah, check them out. Yeah, The Gospel Truth, and there's a couple of tunes, but yeah, you'll find it on the Golden Robots YouTube.
Okay, cool. Well, Troy, thank you very much for the time today, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, you have yourself a great night, and hopefully we'll talk again at some point.
Rock and roll, man. Thanks, man. I appreciate you having some interest and taking out some time to have me on your show. Look forward to seeing it when it's all done.
Okay, and I'll send you the link when it's up.
Cool, man. Thanks, bro.
Okay, take it easy. Cheers.
See you, Tyson.
Bye.
Bye.
Driven by the gun, disobeying orders, his ego would be an early grave. He was known amongst them by his yellow hair. Now Now he'll shoot his gun for the very last time. And this will be Custer's last stand. What a great day to die. Injustice will be done and an eagle will fly. When the battle has begun and a hero will rise, he will be the one they're all talking about in 1,000 years or more. He was born a warrior, one of a kind. He will always be that, nothing could ever change his mind. The spirit can be broken, the heart won't ever change. There'll be no retreat, no surrender, and he will not give up the land that is his.